Hello, everyone, and welcome to MOS Live. My name is Sarah. My pronouns are she and her, and I will be your moderator today, looking out for all of your questions and answers. Today, we are talking with our live animal team all about habitat mysteries. If you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for watching, but unfortunately, we can't grab your questions and comments from those platforms. If you're here with us on Zoom, press that Q&A button if you have any questions or answers, and if you would like a shout out, feel free to leave your name and age. If you'd like to see closed captions, please click the CC button at the bottom of your screen and select Show Captions. All right, now I would like my first museum educator to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Corey. I'm the invertebrate keeper here at the museum, and with me today is Liz, who is our assistant curator in our live animal center. So for those of you who have tuned in before, we're going to be doing our show a little bit differently today. We are actually going to show you guys habitats of an animal, and then you have to guess the animal based on what the habitat looks like. And these are the real life habitats that these animals actually live in here at the museum. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen and sharing our first habitat. So some observations we want you guys to keep in mind while you're looking. We're going to put up a poll in just a couple minutes for you guys to answer. But some things to be looking at are, what's the substrate? Is it soil? Is it sand? Does it look like it's wet in there? Does it look like it's dry? Up in our corner, we have a picture of a cricket. That is this animal's main food here at the museum. Take a look at those plants. What do those plants look like? Do those plants look like something that would be in a temperate forest, a rainforest, a desert? And what about, do you see any places where an animal could be digging, or is the animal climbing high up? Kind of make those observations. So Sarah, now that everyone's kind of had some time to look at what the habitat looks like, do we want to put up the poll and see if anyone can guess? So some things to also be looking at are, is there water in this exhibit? Is there a place for the animal to drink? Is there a place for the animal to maybe swim around? Some other things to look at is our background. What do we have going on back there? We have some mountains, some shrub bushes, kind of nice little different places for all of our animals to hide away. So Sarah, whenever you think that that poll has been significantly answered, we can go ahead and reveal our answer.
Yeah, we're almost there. About 50% of the people have voted. So if you are on Zoom and see that a poll has popped up, feel free to put your vote in and we'll end it in just a second.
Awesome. So Sarah, you tell me when you're ready, but until then, I'm going to just chat at you guys. So something that's really important here at the museum is we make our habitats for our animals very specific to the animal. So we have to know about their natural history. So when going in to design this habitat, I had to know a lot about where this animal originally comes from to be able to do that.
All right, it looks like most people have answered our poll, so I'm going to share the results out.
Awesome. What was that?
Can you see those results?
I can see those results. So it looks like 58% of people said a lizard, which is an amazing guess. 3% of people said a spider, which is also a great guess. 12% said snake, 21% said scorpion, and 6% said beetle. So the correct answer was scorpion. Now, all of those animals are great guesses. If you voted for one of the other animals, that's such a great guess because a lot of them could fit into this habitat. So I'm going to actually have Liz reveal our scorpion who lives in that habitat. So this is Olive, our desert hairy scorpion. So desert hairy scorpions live in the Southwest United States, and they are the largest scorpion that lives in North America. So that's pretty cool. They can be anywhere from 5 to 7 inches in length. And they live for about 7 to 10 years in the wild, but in captivity, they can actually live to be 20 years old, which is pretty old. So when we design our animals' habitats and their homes here at the museum, like I said before, we really need to take into consideration where this animal is coming from, its natural history. So when we look at the desert hairy scorpion, we know that they come from more arid places. So we're not going to want to have an enclosure that's going to be really wet and humid. That's not what's going to work for our scorpion. This species of scorpion also is very prone to getting fungal infections if there's too much moisture in its habitat. So it's really important for keepers to know, or else we might be giving this animal too much water and that could cause it to get really sick and die. So it's really important for us to know these things. Some other great things that we have to keep in mind with our desert hairy scorpion is that it's coloring. So scorpions that are a lighter color are going to be in the desert, and that's so they can camouflage and hide in. Darker scorpions tend to be in more tropical places because they're able to blend in with the darker substrate there. So for our desert hairy scorpion, we want to give her things that she can hide underneath, that she can blend in well and feel really camouflaged. The other big thing is these guys are huge burrowers. They are ambush predators. So they will burrow into the substrate and wait for their prey to come by before they run out and grab it. So we have to make sure that there's plenty of space in this habitat for the scorpion to burrow. Now, we do have to play a fun game where we have to make sure not only do the animals feel like they have a safe environment that meets all their needs, but we also have to set up a space that visitors and people who come to look at the animals can see the animals. So when you were looking at that original habitat, you may have seen there was a little rounded hide in the corner. And that was my attempt that hopefully she would dig down under there and that would be her hide and she would feel like she could burrow in there so people could still see her, but she would still feel safe. That didn't happen. She said, "I do not like your hide." And she filled it with sand and actually burrowed behind a rock behind it. So it's really hard for her, for visitors to see her, but it's also enrichment. So now she's created a new burrow. And in a few months, I will actually then go back in, clean out her enclosure, rearrange some of her decorations, and we'll try it again. And we only do this maybe every 6 months, once a year, because arachnids are so sensitive to their environments. They don't actually like a lot of change. They're very used to their smells. So we don't try to change it that often. So I'm actually going to turn it over and see if we have any questions about our scorpions, about habitats, kind of about anything with, designing a habitat in general.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I'll start with this question about the habitat. Jaden, 8 years old, wants to know, on the ground, is that dirt or sand?
Great question. So it's actually a mixture. So it's a mixture of cocoa fiber, which is, or an eco earth, which is cocoa fiber mixed with sand. And that's so that way it packs enough that she's able to burrow and make a safe hide for herself, but also still has that sand to make sure that there's not too much moisture. Great observation.
Ellie would like to know, what do they eat?
That's a great question. So in the wild, these scorpions would be eating small insects, other invertebrates, and then they may every now and then go for a small rodent or a small reptile, but insects are going to be their main prey.
Zeke wants to know, is the scorpion poisonous?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question. So the scorpion is not poisonous, but it is venomous. So the difference between being poisonous and venomous is poison is something that is rubbed on your skin or you eat, like a poison oak, or if you ate a poison berry. Venom is something that's injected into you. So with our scorpion, they use, I'm sure as a lot of people already know, they use that back tail. It's called a telson, and they're able to sting their prey, and that has venom in it that is released. But scorpions can't just magically just make that venom reappear in there. So once they use that venom, it takes a little bit of time for it to build back up for them to use it again. So it's not something they want to be doing over and over and over and over. It's not their main, they're going to want to more run and hide compared to using that. So they'll use their stinger if they're feeling really, really afraid and really trying to look big and scary.
And on that topic, Cindy wants to know, how does that poison get in their tails?
That's a great question. So the venom in their tails, it's different chemicals that come together that their body makes. And once they come together, that's when it makes the venom that, depending on who you are, it can, really hurt you, or it can be fine. This scorpion right here, this species, it's pretty mild. So it'd be like getting stung by a bee. So if you're allergic to bees, or if you have an allergy, it might swell up a little bit more, but it's going to be similar to a bee sting, where there are other scorpions where their venom is so potent that it can actually be very harmful to humans. But that's maybe a dozen scorpions out of the 2,000 species that are on Earth. Only about a dozen of them are deadly to humans.
Basil wants to know, how can they squeeze through such tight spaces?
That's a great question. So scorpions are able to flatten themselves pretty small to fit under doorways, into different cracks. And a big part of that is also they're not only predators, but they're also prey. So they have to make sure that they're protecting themselves as well. Again, why we see our desert scorpion here, is that lighter opaque color. She's going to blend in with her habitat a lot better. But her predators have quite the advantage on her. So Liz, do you want to pull out our black light if you have a hand to, and see if you can shine that on our scorpion? So Liz is shining a black light on our scorpion, and you may be able to tell that it is actually glowing now. So scorpions actually glow under UV light, which is pretty cool. So if you're ever out in a desert and you're looking for scorpions, you got to bring a UV light with you, because they glow up in the dark. So we're able to see this because we have a special light, a black light, and the UV rays are bouncing out, and we're able to see that with our eyes. Normally, so if Liz takes the light away, she's still glowing with that UV light is coming in and bouncing off of her, but we can't see it because our human eyes only see visible light. But a lot of the predators of scorpions and a lot of insects actually can see the UV light, which, especially during night, comes off from the moonlight. So when the sun bounces on the moon and then the moonlight comes to us, that light makes scorpions glow if you can see in that light spectrum. So we cannot see that unless we have a special light like Liz is showing us, but some other animals can.
That is really cool. So Blossom wants to know, what are their predators?
Great question. So pretty much anything that's a little larger in a carnivore for a scorpion will be its predator. So larger cats, birds will be a big one, kind of anything along those lines. I'm sure even some larger lizards and snakes would go for them as well. So pretty much anything that's a carnivore that's bigger than them, we'll try to snack on these guys.
All right, let's see. Casey wants to know where they live, and Max, age 11, wants to know, what countries do they live in?
That's a great question. So these guys actually live in the United States. So these guys are in the Southwest United States down into Mexico. So they're going to live in like Nevada, Arizona, Texas, kind of those states down there. And then again, down into Mexico is where their range is really going to be. I think that there have been some sightings in California as well, but I don't know that there is a stable population in California. I might be wrong about that. But that's mainly where this species live, and that's only where this species lives, is right here in North America.
All right, Vivian, age 9, wants to know, what's the name and age of the scorpion?
That's a great question. I actually don't know the age of this scorpion. She's probably at least 5 to 6 years old. And her name is Olive, and that is because the scorpion can be this opaque color, but they can also kind of turn an olivey green color, which is pretty cool.
All right, and our last question on this animal, Abigail, age 9, and Isaac, age 6, want to know, how are they born?
That's a wonderful question. So when scorpions are born, they when they come out of their mother, they actually stay on their mother. So they're actually just little tiny baby scorpions. and they will actually stay with mom. They're bright white, and they will stay on their mom until their first molt. So they will, it's anywhere from like 3 weeks to a month, depending on the species of scorpion. But it's pretty cool. We actually had 7 babies born here about 2 years ago to our Asian forest scorpion. We have lots of different scorpions here, but she had 7 babies, which was really fun to see and watch them grow up.
Awesome. All right, I am going to put up some facts about the scorpion. So feel free to, jumped ahead. Feel free to take a picture of this to learn more about the location, food, lifespan, and cool facts. And then we'll wait to see when our educators are ready with our next animal.
All right, I think I'm ready to start our next habitat mystery. So Corey did a great explanation of how we design habitats and environments here at the museum. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen for the next habitat mystery. All right, so this looks much different than the habitat Corey showed you. That's probably your first observation. Now this is actually 2 different sides of this animal's habitat. Sorry, the pictures don't entirely come together perfectly, but you're looking at the left side and then the right side of this animal's habitat. So some things you might notice, there's some branches. So maybe it's an animal that would climb or perhaps jump. There's also some rocks in there. So an animal that might make use of rocks. You're also getting a sneak peek at potentially a food item for the animal. There is a pile of hay in there, so that might be a clue. Another thing you might notice is all the different hide options. So there's kind of some bigger kind of tunnels, enclosures that this animal might want to hide itself in. Also notice the substrate. It's very different than the substrate Corey showed in the first habitat. This one kind of looks like shavings maybe. All right, so now that I've given you some things to look for, you probably already have some guesses in your mind as to what this animal could be, but I'm gonna have Sarah set out the poll, and just like you guys did the first time, you're gonna do your best guess of what you think the animal is. Other things you might notice while you guys are answering your poll, there's a few things in the enclosure that almost look like shelves. So maybe it's an animal that might want to balance, maybe perch up on a shelf. There's also another thing that's kind of challenging to see, but it almost looks like a hammock, kind of on the right side picture underneath the cardboard box, something that an animal might sit on, rest on. How are we doing with the poll, Sarah? Are we getting most responses?
Yeah, I think we're pretty good. I'm gonna end the polling and share it out. Here are our results.
All right, these are all really good guesses because I didn't make this very easy for you. Just like Corey had options where a lot of different animals could live in that habitat, this might be an appropriate habitat for a lot of the animals. Just to share it and kind of say it out loud, we had blue jay at 13% of voters, flying squirrel at 23%, rabbit was our most popular at 35%, chinchilla at 13%, and ferret at 18%. So I think without further ado, Corey is actually going to show you the animal, and then we'll talk about what exactly it is. He's actually still sitting in his crate, but he's probably going to hop out and start exercising in the pen that we left for him. This animal is a chinchilla. And yeah, he just seems to have really settled in that crate. So I kind of made a version of his habitat so you guys could get an idea of some of the things he has that he normally has in his enclosure, but I pulled some of them out so you could get a chance to see them for the presentation today. Now, chinchillas are rodents. So they are related to things like mice, rats, squirrels, chipmunks. Now, the native habitat
or range of a chinchilla is actually mountains. You can find them in the Andes Mountains in Chile. So if you think about it, that habitat is kind of hard to perfectly replicate when you have these animals in captivity. It's not like we can easily take a mountain and bring it here into the museum. But you noticed in those habitat pictures that we showed you, we try to bring aspects or different things they would encounter within their habitat here in the museum. So they really are great jumpers, climbers, and they do live at really high elevations since they live in the Andes Mountains. So a lot of those perches that we have in that habitat are kind of to mimic what would be kind of rocky ledges on those mountains. Chinchillas spend a lot of time balancing on rocky ledges. Another thing is those burrows. We had lots of different options for this chinchilla to hide within the habitat. This is something they would do a lot in the wild. They are often a prey animal, so other animals might want to hunt chinchillas. So in the wild, they're mostly going to find rocky crevices that they can kind of wedge their bodies in. So we really do try to imitate a lot of things that they would have in their native habitat. Another thing that we had, again, while we can't have a mountain here in the museum, we do have a lot of rocks in the habitat. Now, I feel like I have to pause for a moment and talk about what our chinchilla is doing right now. Most of you are probably making observations that he's pretty adorable in whatever he is doing. He is actually taking a dust bath. Now, chinchillas live in pretty harsh climates. They're at those really high elevations, 14,000 feet. It's really, really cold. So in order to survive the cold, they have really thick fur. Chinchillas have the densest fur of all land mammals. They have 60 hairs in each hair follicle. To give you a comparison, we have about 2 hairs in each hair follicle. So their fur is really, really dense, really, really thick to keep them warm in the cold climates. Now, because this fur is so dense, they actually really cannot get wet. If they get wet, they basically become waterlogged. They become way too saturated with water. So instead, to keep themselves clean, chinchillas can't take water baths because again, they'll turn into waterlogged, what looks like drowned rats. They instead use dust. So they have kind of dust from pumice, so stone, that they actually will keep themselves clean. Now our chinchilla bathes probably a couple times a week. So that's actually what we had in that glass case. So he enjoyed his dust bath and then he went on and is going through other tunnels and things as well. Actually, one of the hides that he was just in before is one that I took from his habitat. So he probably feels comfortable having some aspects of his home in this temporary pen that he's in right now. Now I see, Sarah, that we already have lots of questions. So why don't I turn it over to some of those?
Yes, absolutely. All right, our first question is from Ariella, wants to know, how do they eat?
How do they eat? So chinchillas are herbivores, so they eat vegetation. They actually will eat things like bromeliads, which are plants, cactus, ferns, fruits that they're able to find, seeds. So they do have teeth that are typical of mice, rats, squirrels, and chipmunks. So they have rodent teeth. So kind of like those buck teeth that you think of in the front of those animals' mouths, they have similar teeth to that. So chinchillas pretty much eat just by kind of grabbing a hold of something with their mouth. Sometimes a bigger plant item that they're eating, they might hold on to with their front limb and kind of eat that way. But they're not hunters, they're not predators, they are just eating vegetation and different plants that they're able to find. And I guess he needed a little bit more bath time. All right, another question, Sarah?
Yeah, we have a lot of questions about what exactly a chinchilla is. So for example, Jaden said, are they like a rabbit or a mouse or maybe a lemur? And then Basil, age 7, wants to know, what exactly is a chinchilla other than a rodent?
That's a good question. So rodent is the order. So that's a bigger grouping that chinchilla belongs to. If you break it down even further, the family that chinchillas are in, there's actually only one other kind of animal that they're related to. It's called a vacara. And then if you break it down even further, there are 2 species of chinchillas. So I don't know if that perfectly explains it. I think someone had suggested lemur, that maybe they look something like a lemur. So lemurs are actually not related. They are not rodents. So they're only related in that they're different kinds of mammals. Chinchillas definitely are an unusual animal, and they don't have too many close relatives. So that might be why it's kind of hard to think of the animals they might be related to, because there really aren't too many that they're very closely related to.
All right, Vivian, age 9, wants to know, what is the name and age of the chinchilla?
This chinchilla is named Barnaby, and he is about 3 or 4 years old. We don't know his exact age because we adopted him, but we believe he is about 3 or 4 years old.
All right, let's see. Some people are asking if you can have chinchillas as pets, and Casey, age 8, wants to know that where did we get our chinchilla?
This chinchilla was adopted from a shelter. You can legally have chinchillas as pets, at least here in Massachusetts. I'm not sure that that's true of all of the states in the United States, but you can have them in Massachusetts. Most of the chinchillas that are pets here in the United States are actually descended from a small group of about 11 or 12 chinchillas that were brought to the United States in about the 1920s, I believe. Chinchillas are pretty endangered in their native habitat. So you can't take them out of the wild because there's not that many to begin with, even still left in Chile. But domestic ones, or ones that people keep as pets, are all descended from that one strain of chinchillas, which I think is kind of cool.
Miss Gornitsky wants to know, why are their arms so short?
That's a good question. Even though their front limbs are pretty short, that's a good observation. You'll notice it doesn't affect their speed at all. They're very fast. He's moving pretty quickly in there. I believe that they're so small so that they can balance on really steep, rocky crevices and ledges. So again, they're up in those mountains. So if they had clunky, huge front legs, it probably would be a little harder to balance as well, because their bodies look kind of chubby and bulky, but they are pretty agile, as you guys can see, and he's demonstrating. So I really think those small legs help them balance a little bit better on something that might be pretty narrow.
All right, I think this is our last question for this program. Ellie, age 7, wants to know, how many babies do they have? And someone else wants to know, how are they born?
They actually typically only have 1 or 2 babies. They can have a few more than that, but that's more the average, which is kind of small if you compare it to some other kinds of rodents like mice and rats. They might have 10 babies in a litter. Their gestation, or amount of time that the mother is pregnant, is also a lot longer than some other rodents. Some rodents are only pregnant for 3 weeks. Chinchillas are pregnant for 111 days. So a pretty long time. And the babies are actually born live, like most mammals. So the babies do come out live and they nurse from their mother. When they are born, they're born with their eyes open. So kind of also unusual for a rodent. Good question though.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are all out of time for today. So everyone say goodbye to our animals.
Bye, guys.
I am going to share some more facts about our chinchilla. So feel free to take a picture of this or write down some of these facts about Barnaby, our chinchilla. I want to thank everyone today for being amazing scientists and asking great questions and making great observations about the habitats today. If you enjoyed today's program, you can support the museum by visiting engage.mos.org/welcome. And if you'd like to see our virtual offerings, you can head to mos.org/mos@home. So thank you, everyone. Happy Friday, and I hope that you have a great weekend.